Get ready for another UFO video update, my friends. If you haven't seen this interview by now, you really should watch it. It is Joe Rogan with Hal Puthoff out here. Let me just give you some few words from Hal.
And the fact that now's the time, sooner rather than later, to begin to have this become part of our total philosophical fabric, to face into this and to accept the reality of, non-human intelligences, for example, and recognize that our own technical development is moving so fast that the kind of things that we find to be so mysterious are pretty much likely in our not that far off future.
Or just whoa. It's pretty much done disclosure to the whole world through this. Actually, it's kind of cracky interview, friends. I've watched it many times. It's actually awesome. So Hal, friends, Hal, he's 88 years old. He's a national treasure. Yeah, he's like Richard Dolan, Dickie Dolan. They're just like these like really nice human beings. They're just like, they invite you over, they bake you some cookies, and they're just like, they're nice, you know what I mean? Like just they're good, studious, tax-paying citizens, okay? But Hal's also very, very special. Very high IQ, very smart. He was one of the OG dudes when the government first had the UFO ships. They called him because they're like, hey, you're in that quantum astrophysics thing. We need you to come check stuff out. So I've got some clips here to play from the clip, the show. There's so many awesome moments here from the episode. What I'll do is, friends, we're gonna go through this cute little part, but I'm gonna give you just a bit of a cute preface here. So Hal, friends, Hal is obviously super smart, quantum physics. He helped design a lot of the science experiments that the Coconut Intelligence Agency were doing because they have to measure all the remote viewing stuff. And you're like, whoa, remote viewing. You remember, friends, remote viewing, Joe McMoneagle and Ingo Swann. They're two of the most famous ones out here. This is Joe. If you type in as well, Ingo Swann, this gentleman. So what Hal explains, oh wow, this is one of their sketches that they've drawn out here. That's cool. Yeah, so as Hal explains, just like we all play sports and there's a bell curve distribution about how good someone would be, like just for example, basketball, there'd be like the top people at the very, 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 very good end, there's everyone in the middle, and there's people who like can barely run, right? Maybe because they just don't like balls. So he said it's actually the same thing with remote viewing. Now, remote viewing, it's not imagining something. In this episode, he explains that pretty much what scientists have discovered. So we don't know exactly how it works right now. We don't know. It's bleeding edge. But in our brains, we have, neurons. Okay, I just got a peanut. Don't know what you have. You probably got a normal sized brain, maybe. That might be offensive to some people, by the way. So in your brain, you got your neurons. And, everything's talking to each other, just buzzing around, just giving us dopamine all day, right? So, like, for example, like when you see lights and stuff appear and you're like, yes, do something, brain, right? That's most of the stuff. But they've found that in our brain, we've got, I think, something called like microtubules. I think that was a word he used, where they can pick up quantum signals, okay? So quantum signals is like super subatomic stuff. So yeah, when you talk about quanta, you mean like so tiny, smaller than atom stuff, right? Subatomic particles with unique properties governed by quantum mechanics. All right. So yeah, we're talking like super tiny, really small, weird stuff happening out here because there's multiple fields, multiple dimensions, and everything out here. So our brains can pick that up. Now, if you, for example, friends, I don't know if you know any twins in your life. I know twins. And I've shared this with you before, but I'm not joking, okay? When one of the twins is upset, her sister will know, and they will literally be in another suburb. Yeah, she'll be moody all day, and then she'll call her hey, you've been crying all day. They'll know. All right, I'm not making it up. They're making it up. They're like, and by the way, if you ever know twins, like this, they know this stuff. It's not just the finishing sentences part. Like their brains are kind of like in sync. There's other stuff as well. Like they just know. Now with remote viewing, remember there's a lot of this quanta stuff out here. So there's all these fields and all these things that we can't measure them out yet. So remember, there's quanta things happening, and then there's also, that's why science, bleeding edge science, it's difficult to wrestle with, say, Neil deGrasse Tyson science, because you make a very fundamental critical mistake in most of science, because you're assuming whatever it is you're studying is dumber than you, which is a very fatal assumption if you're a monkey in a zoo, isn't it? All right. Now, Hal, studying all this remote viewing and talking about the UAPs and everything out, he's obviously because he's very inquisitive, because he's like, man, I know we can do this. There's actually some interesting stuff out here. There's one experiment. Now, this is where it gets crazy, because the number one people say is, they go, bro, if you're really a psychic, you should be a billionaire. And actually, one of the experiments Hal did was they did it on silver futures. They gave a guy approached them. He said, we'll give you $26,000, and they turned it into $260,000 by some point. And they designed an experiment. But here's the thing. It wasn't one remote view. I think it was 7. So, and every day, not everybody had a good reading. So whoever had like a strong reading on the day, they would use that to see whether it was like a strong up or a strong down day. So it was either up, down, or kind of sideways. So there are these interesting things that come around, right? But I am fascinated about that because Hal, even in this, the clips as you go through, he explains how it kind of got, slowly siphoned in. Obviously, he's been shown stuff he can't speak about, but he's coming from a perspective of, he goes, look, this is actually it was very eye-opening. He goes, look, we want to disclose stuff to everyone. There's just a lot of ramifications that people don't know about. He goes, for example, a lot of things implode if we do this. Like, because we have to admit that, like, there are certain science companies that are bankrupt now who have been, like, bleeding forever because their competitor got given UFO tech. So he says that is going to, it's going to make everybody lose their mind. Think about the jobs lost, the money lost. Okay, that's not capitalism, right? That's like information asymmetry to the max. Because there's some companies, they've been beaming and successful because they got the UFO tech. It's also interesting, in one of the stories he shares, he said that it's so compartmentalized that what they'd have to do is, in a company, there's so many different compartments, no one's allowed to know what they're all working on. You can't put them all together, but they're all working on weird UFO stuff, weird mechanics and stuff. So he says his team would have to come in. They will collect the stuff from their basement of the company. He goes, there's companies out there, aeronautics, space stuff, like all these science guys. They don't know, the people in the company don't know they literally have UFO tech like in the basement. He says, so they would have to go grab the materials and then a week later go to their front office and speak to one of the head managers with the materials, right? And say, oh, we're thinking about running some tests on this stuff. And they're like, oh, cool. Well, where did you get this from? And they're like, oh, we can't tell you, from the government. But really, it just came from downstairs within the institution itself. Now, let's watch this clip of Hal right here. It's really cool.
Right now, I'm just too busy. He says, look, come, it'll be the most important meeting you've ever had in your life. Well, since I had him calibrated, because I had done other work with him and for the Navy and so on, I said, okay, I'll come. So I showed up there, and I saw people, some of whom I knew, including my ex-contract monitor from CIA, people from DIA, a lot of military people and so on. So he sat us all down and said, okay, here's the deal. Here's why I've invited you all here. Let's just say, he says, that the United States, Russia, and China have obtained ET craft that have crashed And we have proof of that. Bodies that aren't human. And so the question is, can this be released to the public? What effect would it have? So I and the other people, I found out by talking to them later, we thought, oh, this is cool. I mean, maybe we can get, some kind of disclosure here. And so he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make up a list of what would be affected in the culture with this kind of a disclosure. And by the way, at this point, we still didn't know, is he saying that that's true stuff, or is this a hypothetical? Or
Right.
Anyway, so anyway, make a list. So we came up with a long list, like, 60 items or something. You say, oh, wow, stock market might be affected, religions might be affected, whatever.
Government.
Government affected, policies be affected, politics would certainly be affected. And then for each item, we had to go give it a score from +9 to -9 as to how intense the effect would be and whether it's positive or negative. So anyway, we broke up into groups, and our group had our list of 8 or so. And so we went down our list, and it turned out that we ended up getting net negative numbers. And let me tell you why you can get negative numbers. One of the things down toward the bottom of the list, and we really got into the weeds, was, well, suppose materials from a crash retrieval of a non-human craft was given to Corporation A, but Corporation B didn't get any samples. And then years later, Corporation A is making lots of money based on what they got. Meanwhile, Corporation B has gone bankrupt, and then they find out they were excluded. Well, they're going to end up suing the corporations, suing the government. I mean, it really gets gnarly when you get into the weeds and into the details. And so, as it turns out, with our group of 8 or so, we said, this we get a negative number. Well, it turned out that all the groups got negative numbers. So the outcome of that exercise was, if you're thinking about disclosure, forget it.
Was this during George Herbert Walker Bush's?
No, it was during Bush 2.
Bush 2. George Bush, rather.
George Bush, yeah.
W.
Right.
So when this was all going on, you still didn't know what they had.
Didn't know what they had.
This was just, they were saying...
This could be hypothetical, or
Right.
he could be trying to tell us something, but he wouldn't say. So,
Interesting. And how much time did they give you to compile this list and to generate these numbers of plus and
it
minus?
was 2 or 3 days. I don't recall right now.
How did you stock market? How did you figure out how that would be negatively or positively
Well,
impacted?
it was just a gut response, basically.
You remote viewed it?
No, didn't do that.
No, but did you?
By the way, in the remote viewing program, one of the things they told us, look, you guys that are running this program, don't you ever think about remote viewing yourself. We learned in the LSD days that if the experimenters get involved in the subject they're researching, they lose their objectivity. And don't think you can sneak away and get away with it, because we'll get you on the polygraph. And so no, never did.
Don't remote view yourself. What a bizarre thing to tell someone.
That's what they
Yeah.
said. So anyway, back to this. We came up with our numbers and said, this does not look like a good idea. So at that time, that was the viewpoint. Now, as we'll get into, at this point, I have a different viewpoint. I think there should be more disclosure than.
Very interesting, right? Very interesting. Do you notice how at the end they said, don't remote view yourself? That is very weird, Fenzi. One of my other UFO videos, I've shown, there's this random case, remote viewing as well. So you can't verify this. You don't have to just stories and just people sent out, but there was a story where one of the remote viewers, so your American government, the Coconut Intelligence Agency, they kept running the program, just getting all these psychics, because obviously they look for the best. Like Joe McMoneagle was off the charts, so is Ingo Swann off the charts. Remember, it's a bell curve. So, and by the way, the one I'm about to tell you now is 100% true. The government in America does scan children's schools for gifted psychic ability. Okay, people who are good at remote viewing. I don't know what it is. Is your pineal gland bigger? You know, little pine cone, your third eye thing. Is it bigger? You could have more of the microtubules, which can react to quantum stuff more. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe we don't even really know. But they do scan and they check a lot of stuff. There have been kids who've been pulled out of school. Like people being like, oh yeah, this kid was like really weird or whatever, and they just took him out. Yeah, so there have been things like that. They actually confirmed and stuff out here. So one of the stories was that, so the government, they've been doing this for like, you know, decades and decades, but there was one story where they kept remote viewing the moon. Yes. And it's in my one, the moon, friends. We know it's hollow. But on the moon, some crazy things happened where someone remote viewed, they went on the backside and they could like see an entity, and the entity looked at them, they go, you shouldn't be here. Don't ever come here again. And so we were basically warned off. Basically, hey, don't come and check this. Because obviously, you know, maybe they're dark side of the moon. Maybe they're the watchers. Like, hey, you're not meant to be here yet. They kept going. And they said one of the remote viewers, when they went in there, they're now in a vegetable state. So they went there, their consciousness got trapped. They could not like come out of it. Right? So we don't know if it's a scare story or what it is. Is that even possible? But yeah, that's just something that kind of like, just, you know, because Hal just said, you know, they told him, don't remote view yourself or anything. It's kind of crazy. Isn't it crazy as well, friends? During this segment as well, they bring him in, a couple of the other people, and they're like, oh yeah, suppose there was an ET crash. What is the effects, the ontological shock on people? And everyone ranks it. Interesting how literally every single science group they did, everybody was ranked negative, negative, negative. Also, throughout the interview, Hal pretty much says the reason why they're open, this is very interesting. He goes, in the space race with Russia. So remember America, friends, 1970s. America was in the space race, technology race with Russia. Yeah? From that, America developed like a lot of more electronics and stuff. And he says America shot off and accelerated. And Russia did not come close. So there was a big advantage from America. So shout out to the American baby dolls out there. All right. Also, I got a lot of Russian friends as well. Shout out to you, baby dolls. So basically, America had this big advantage. And so, you know, Hal uses that example. He says, well, if we were back in the electronic superiority days of America, there's no reason to really share information about your chips, about your Intel, about how you build IBM or anything, or internet stuff, right? He goes, there's a difference though with this UFO stuff. He basically implies that America, Russia, and China, they're pretty neck and neck with how advanced they are. All right, which tells you basically that everyone's working on this deep on the ground. China, Russia, America, they're like, yo, we got to get it going. We got to find the anti-gravity stuff, the magic, right? So what he actually makes a case for, he goes, well, since we're all neck and neck, right, and like no one has one big advantage, it's probably advantageous for everyone to like share what they kind of know, but disclose stuff. But actually, Hal really does mention a point. He goes, look, what you absolutely want to avoid is spilling the beans too much. He goes, because there are adversarial people. He's talking about China and Russia, pretty much. China and Russia were building stuff as well. He goes, you never know how far they are up to from building some super big thing. And they're just missing like one or two components. So if you tell them the component, they might be like, oh, okay, cool, screw these guys. Let's just go finish it off. We found what we need. Which is interesting. Now it's in a hyper-competitive triangle, right? Russia, China, and America. Who's going to win this race out here? Also, shout out to my friend, Mr. Big Banana. One thing Hal never talks about is that he reached the highest level in Scientology in the 80s, operating thetan level and clear and higher. Hal is a very accomplished remote viewer himself, but never talks about his abilities. I read about that, sir, on Twitter. I couldn't believe it. Hal is an actual Scientologist, and he actually went into that. That's wild, man. Because he's such a quantum physics guy. There might be more to Scientology than we think. But L. Ron Hubbard, it sounds so like Amway, scammy, but, you know, there might be more than we think. Mr. Zedman, as soon as I hear the word crash, I know it's all BS. ETs have the technology to travel many light years distance, but they can't avoid a little crash when they get to Earth. So they're not actual crashes, they're donations. Also mentioned in it. So yeah, they leave some of them for everyone. Right, so actually what Hal actually mentions is America, China, and Russia, they've all had donations. Isn't that cool? Mr. Aliens. But we don't know why. So one hypothesis is Mr. Aliens are like, okay, let's drop a ship to all of the big cities of the congregations of humans. Whoever advances the fastest will do the next step on. What's the next step or phase? Who knows? You got to ask them. No? Yeah, maybe Vitalik can channel it and tell us. So that's it. So yeah, they're not actually all crashes, sir. Also, some of them, this is the crazy part. There's an EMP bomb they make from the nuclear weapons. Because that's why I was like, man, they're advanced civilizations out here, but they're androids as well. Right? So it's not what we think. But yeah, they actually are donating stuff out here. Because one, they're androids. They're the great alien ones. But also they could be doing their own experiments. You know, kind of like friends, like when you have a banana. You have 3 bananas in your hand. There's 3 monkeys in 3 cages. You want to see? I don't know who can eat the fastest. You just throw them out there, right? And imagine like a skeptical monkey's like, you think a human would accidentally slip a banana that's that ripe and juicy out of his hand to throw it in a cage? You know what I mean? It's beyond our comprehension. Now, I've got another clip here from Howley Boo. It goes through, friends, what he actually thinks they are. So, Joey Rogan, okay, Joseph Rogan, he asks him, what are they actually, you know? There is no definitive answer. Could be, there's many things. It could, honestly, I'm leaning more towards their everything. I'm leaning more towards that. There's lots of everything, right? It's kind of like when you say, oh, what is life on Earth? Oh, we got birds flying. We got, bugs. We got, like humans. We've got, like, frogs. You have dogs, you know? You got plants. Then you have underground stuff, worms. You've got in the sea. You know what I mean? Like, life, there's, like, such a big distribution. So, based off just how the universe makes stuff, there's never one of anything. I feel like everything's got life. And by the way, they have done science experiments like this, friends. If I told you about the plant in the room experiment, this one flipped me the hell out, man. I can't. This one, I can't believe this. So yeah, this one, it still keeps me up at night, this one, this experiment. So friends, imagine this box is a room and here's a flashlight, okay? So they actually did this. There's a square room and there's a light in the middle and the light is hooked up to a program computer and it's randomized, yeah? So the light will flash to any corner with even distribution. So first they run this experiment with nothing in the room, all right? So and guess what happens? So the light, let's actually do a nice sun emoji here. The light, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's like 25% randomly, okay? So they go and they check it and they measure it and they go, all right, there's like, 25, 25, 25, 25, okay? So it is randomly distributed. It goes, oh, wow, there's like, okay, cool, it's so random. Then they introduce the plant. It's an ordinary plant, friends. They introduce the plant in the room and they put it in a corner. All right, are you ready? They do the switcheroonies on and then the light is measured everywhere. Guess what happens? The light that was random before is now slightly higher odds to land on the plant. That's right. That's right. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. A little innocent ant plant, probably a nuclear herb type of plant. What is going on? So we don't know. Maybe there's more science. Maybe this is bleeding edge science shit. Yeah. So is the universe itself like reorganizing odds to keep this plant alive? Or does this plant have a life field, a quanta field, some sort of life thing where it is organically trying, when it sees light, it's just trying to push it its way. It's trying to keep it alive. Does it have like a life force? We don't know. Right, so I'm using words. If you've played like any Japanese RPG, adventure game, or PlayStation game, Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, whatever, you play any game, we know about that stuff. You know, like, you know, there's mana, there's game, you know, World of Warcraft, and we're used to all that terminology stuff out here. But all the normies, they're not used to this stuff, right? They're used to like, oh, let's you know, like line up like cattle and then go listen to what the government says. Well, let's go sit down on this park bench and I'll take our hormone blockers for the day. That's what normies are doing, just blue pill stuff. So when we're talking about like, these words like life force and stuff out here, like what's actually happening here? Well, it's bleeding edge science. So it's funny, like this is the stuff, friends. Why isn't Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about this? Like why aren't you, bro? Why this should be your life mission, dude? You're a science dude. Come and tell me how the plant, the nuclear herb type of plant, mind you. Tell me how the plant is doing that. And he's like, I can't tell you why the plant is doing it, but I can measure it. I can concoct a science experiment for it. That's exactly how Neil deGrasse Tyson would be approaching stuff out here. But also, friends, science dudes, they learn their box of competency and then they like get very, very comfortable with it. And then you and I, we're literally lollipop licking crackheads. We're like, dude, we don't have any care factor for this reputation shit. Do you understand? Like, as far as I'm concerned, like the odds are so stacked against us with just everything, and like it's just a new world, bro. You know what I mean? Like it's a new world. And we don't give a crap. You know, there's a lot of things like we're taught life's black and white. It ain't so black and white. There's a lot of grays. You know what I mean? Like Barrack Obama was snorting coke lines in college. You know what I mean? And he had a twink relationship with his college professor. You know what I mean? There's a lot of grays. By the way, it's real. Go read it. I'm not making up. Go check his biography. There's a lot of weird stuff that's happening out there. It just kind of like pokes you in a very non-family friendly way. It's kind of like showing you like, man, it's you know, like your heroes do some bad stuff and then the bad guys do some good stuff and you're like, you know what I mean? That's you learn through life a lot of that. So remember that plant, friends, that plant experiment in the room, man. I still think about this, man. I still think about that light. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay. So this is bleeding edge things, right? Now we got a bit more juice and context and warmth when it comes to listening to Hal and his next segment.
As far as where they come from or what they're doing here, I myself have written a paper called Ultraterrestrials, where I try to cover the gamut. And I cover everything. Yeah, they could be spacecraft from some other galaxy whipping through here. Or maybe there's some Atlanteans left over from eons ago, and they're just kind of hiding out in the seabed or on some mountain range someplace. Or maybe some ET group showed up here 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and they're hiding out with some bases locally and so on. And of course, we have a fellow by the name of a professor by the name of Masters who thinks that, well, maybe it's time travelers from the future coming back. And then there's the whole idea, since physicists like to talk about additional dimensions, you know, maybe they come from another. So anyway, then in my Ultraterrestrials paper, I list everyone I can think of and say, you know, we should be exploring all of these. So at this point, I would say we know it's NHI, non-human intelligence, but it's not clear what the source is. Maybe at a higher level of classification than I had access to, maybe it's known. But right now, I'd say we don't.
Do you have a suspicion?
I guess my suspicion that it's likely non-human intelligence from some other galaxy or far out in our own galaxy that have come here, but some time back, and that there are stations here.
So, remember, friends, there's remote viewers. We've got in Australia, there's Mount Zeal, and there's there's three other mountains around the world. There's UFO bases where there's always UFOs there. And remote viewers have actually found, and by like multiple remote viewers, so two, they drew the same thing around these hotspots where they could see like this UFO dude. He's like got a watch panel, like these monitor screens, and he's just like watching us like forever, end of time, and basically saying, "Don't come here," but they're just and there's always UFO activity around these places out here. Actually, in one of them, it's actually in Australia as well. A Japanese plane tried to fly near it, and they got like electrical zapped. I think like just everything went off. It was pretty much like saying, "Oh, don't go here," right? So yeah, but remember, I showed you. Remember the plant in the room. So the universe, man, never makes one of anything. What are they? What is the phenomenon? I reckon it's all of it. That's what I think. What do you think? I feel like it's all of it. I feel like there's a bit of us in the future. There's multiple dimensions. Remember, friends, the Dota 2 character Wisp, that little just fart wisp. You know what I mean? Like that's like the end of all these like advanced games. The final boss is like you just literally become like just a ball of light. And you just go around existing as a ball of light. That's like you've transcended everything. You just like literally just this like ball of photon light just going around, right? Yeah, everything from spirituality. But yeah, obviously people have different religious beliefs when it comes to these as well. Some of them believe like it's angels, demons. Yeah, it's probably multifaceted. It's probably all of them, man. Right? Probably is all of them. It also reminds me as well, friends, even when Hal's they're trying to figure a lot of this stuff out, there could be people who know the answers. Well, are we ever going to get told? Is it scary? We don't know. When it comes to the remote viewing stuff, they've done different experiments as well where this is the part that's also bleeding edge science. When they did they tested so someone's got the envelope and they're like, okay, we have someone out here. They're going to go to a location somewhere in America. Tell us where they're going. What do you see? Okay. Or maybe they don't even tell them that. It's just something in the envelope. Now, they tried 3 different things where they tried one experiment where they sent the person around America. They went there last week. And then the envelope was seeing if the remote viewers could like figure out where they went. So that's in the past. Then they checked the present. They go, okay, I am going somewhere right now. And also they tested it where they got the remote viewers to see where they're going in the future. And here's the thing. It was evenly distributed. So whether the person was going in the past, in the present, or in the future, they had the same distribution of like the win rates and stuff out here. Which is wild to think about. It's almost kind of showing us, science might in the future tell us, time is this like convoluted weaving thing. I think Hal Puthoff, even in the interview, he calls it like a slippery slope. There's one guy who's like, it's not just him, some guy who's like got a master's in like quantum physics, some Nobel Prize winning dude. That's what he calls it, like a slippery slope. So it's strange. Sometimes when we have dreams, friends, that's why like a lot of the theory about it is like, well, when we have a precognition, is it from the past? Is it something that's happening right now? Is it happening in the future? Or is it happening in a parallel timeline? Now there's infinite possibilities. There's a lot of possibilities here. So that's why it's like you're not likely to find, hey, the psychic, oh, I'm a billionaire because I knew exactly what all these messages mean, right? But it is interesting out here that all these things are coming together. So Hal Puthoff, one of the gems. But also a lot of people like a bit of distrust because, you know, there are things they can't share. They can't share. They might say, oh, it's national security. But yeah, we'll see, friends. A lot of these things out here, I am very fascinated with
this is literally bleeding edge.
science stuff. And it's funny because it takes like crypto nutcases to go there. They're too scared to go there because they're like, oh, where's the equations? Where's the hypothesis? I don't know, bro. I don't know and I don't care. You know, I don't give a shit. I find it fascinating. There's no answers for this yet, but there's probably going to be an answer in the next 50 to 100 years. We just don't get things yet, right? Just like how we were driving wooden cars 200 years ago. Then we made, you know, a slightly less wooden car, and then we got metal cars, right? Just there's some progress of science out here. I think it's pretty cool. Let me know what you think. I wonder one day, man, if we'll be able to do some remote viewing to the crypto prices. But do we really want to know? Because if it tells you something you don't want to hear, kind of defeats the purpose. Let me know what you think, friends. Like, subscribe, belly button, or catch you soon.